Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 158. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comics forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the Whatnot Segulin. On this episode, we're going to be joined in part 2 of our special interview with colorist Art Lyon as we discuss his work on Brave and the Bold. We also have some listener voicemails and a quick audio comment. Our sponsor for this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Speaking of Art Lyon, you can check out his work in Brave and the Bold Without Sin. Written by Marv Wolfman and David Hine, art by Phil Winslade and Doug Braithwaite, cover by Doug Braithwaite. Don't miss the latest round of the DCU team-ups from the Brave and the Bold, 17-22. Green Lantern's in a tough situation as he finds himself teaming with the Phantom Stranger to aid a far-off world. Plus, Supergirl and Raven band together to save San Francisco from a new supervillain with deep roots in the DC Universe. This is 144 pages. It's regularly $17.99, 40% off only $10.79. Art is also going to be featured on JSA vs. Cobra, Engines of Faith, number 1 of 6. Written by Eric Trotman, art by Don Kramer and Michael Babinski, cover by Gene Ha. It's regularly $2.99, 50% off, only $1.49. Whatever your shipping preferences, your bag and boarding preferences, DCBService.com accommodates your collecting needs. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, InStockTrades.com, where you can also pick up Art's work on Justice League of America Volume 2, The Lightning Saga trade paperback. This collects 0 and 8 through 12 of Justice League of America and Justice Society of America number 5 and 6. The JLA has discovered the presence of several members of the Legion of Superheroes in the present. And Art was responsible for one of these wonderful issues with the great art of Gene Ha featuring Red Arrow and Vixen as they were trapped in a very claustrophobic situation. And the artwork really told a wonderful story there. But if you haven't picked this up, it's regularly $17.99, 37% off, only $11.33. And we have a previous episode of Raging Bullets where we did an in-depth interview with Art chatting about this particular issue. So if you haven't read it or you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, it's a great time to pick up that trade and go ahead and listen to that episode, the cover-to-cover discussion we have about it. InStockTrades.com offers free shipping on orders of $50 or more, has a ton of collected editions in stock and ready to ship. Thank you for supporting us, DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. I want to thank all of you for continuing to support us with Podcast Alley, Pop Current, iTunes reviews, blogging about us, posting on forums, anything that you're doing just to let a friend know or anybody know about Raging Bullets and that you've been enjoying the show. Brings in some new listeners to us, which is always good for the show, and we really appreciate that kind of community support you guys have given us. Don't forget to check out RagingBullets.com, news updates, listener-generated content, Life in the Gutter, Mart's blog, lots of fun links, show-related news. I'm constantly trying to update the website and do new things with it. So, and there's so much listener content on there. You guys are really, it's a community aspect of Raging Bullets. So please continue to add those things into the show because we love having them a part of the show. I want to remind everybody about our contest, which is ragingcontest@gmail.com. We want you guys to pick the next trade review that we're going to do. We're coming up on Long Halloween, and the next one we want to do from the listener's perspective. We want you guys to pick what you want us to chat about. We want this contest to be easy and accessible for anyone who wants to enter it. Do a blog, do an article about some comic that you're really enjoying right now. Send it in to me at ragingcontest@gmail.com. A Where's What Not Now, a comic strip if you want to do some art, any sketches you've gotten at conventions, anything really that you think would be great for the website. Feel free to send it in. Do a new banner for us. Whatever your talents are, go ahead and bring them in. Anytime you send something into the show, it becomes a contest entry. I do backlog those, so I'm keeping all of them from any that have entered since we started doing this contest. So this is going to be an ongoing contest, so any entry that you do will go towards not only this particular contest, but the next one that we have as well. On the first episode that we're going to be airing Long Halloween, we are going to pick the winner of this contest, and that will be when that person can then think about what book they want to choose for the show, and we'll announce it on the following episode, on part 2 of the Long Halloween, so you guys can know what trade that's going to be going through InStockTrades.com that you're going to be joining us from. We would love to have you on the show and be a part of this segment. It's open to anybody. If you have any questions about the contest, ragingcontest@gmail.com, just send me a quick little email and say, hey, Sean, I have an idea for the show. What do you think about this? And we definitely love you to be a part of it.
Well, we are a spoiler podcast. We go in depth in plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're reviewing. So if we're going over something you haven't read, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
If you haven't had a chance to listen to episode 156 for the first part of this 2-part interview with friend of the show, Art Lyon. We're back to Marika and what was...
Marika.
Yeah. That whole segment for me, when we start learning now about the Purge from Orlan, and this is the part where this is where it really clued me in that Sage was a part of Korra on some level. I didn't know how that worked. I knew right from this, I'm like, oh, that's what's going on here. We're learning from Orlan, the rich history of that race and how the devastation of that race led these two great powers from that race to become adversaries with each other. It's funny, I would love to see more of this mythos that was created here explored.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when a writer comes along and makes up a new villain with a fairly involved background. You have an origin story. I mean, there's, probably another writer will come along and do something with this.
I would love to see this, and I'm hoping it happens, and I think the odds are pretty good because of the fact that most of the Brave and the Bold has been collected in hardcovers. This is a visual piece. Hardcovers are my favorite for artwork. I love seeing them collected in hardcovers because I like to page through and look at them a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And hardcovers work really well for me for that type of... And we usually get a little better quality paper.
Before I forget, I wanted to mention, I just listened, the past week or two, I listened to your interview with Dave Barron, which was really interesting as a colorist to hear an interview on the same show I've done interviews on, but with a colorist whose name I see around a lot and who has a very different background. His background with Wildstorm, starting out really young and really early on with Wildstorm. Although I get the impression that he started coloring, or the first time that he did coloring was around the first time that I did it, like 94 or something like that. Interesting. I'm glad that I listened to it. I'm glad that you guys arranged that. And it's obvious that I'm not the only colorist who spends lots of lonely hours, listening to podcasts. So,
well, what was interesting to me about being able to talk to both of you, and it really actually... I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to do that, because we've talked to him before, you, and then we've talked to Alan Pasalacqua.
Right, yeah.
And one of the nice things, it really made me appreciate just how vastly different... We talk about how different pencilers are, how different inkers are, and how just those changes bring different things to the artwork. I've learned how much the sensibility of a colorist, the art. You mentioned before, I consider myself an artist. I'm part of the art. You are. It's you bring your own sensibilities to the piece. You really take a look at it. There's nothing cookie cutter about colorists. You guys all have, and it's really something that I've come to really appreciate on this show. That I spent my whole life, I think, when I grew up reading comics since the 70s. I was learning a lot about pencilers that I liked and all that. I think we tend to look there first. Now it's funny how much my focus is. I know what my distinctions are with pencilers. I've learned in the past few years a lot about colorists. And
it's changed a lot since we were kids reading comics. It's changed. I mean, it's a whole different world. What's being done with colors now.
And so much for the better, because what we're getting now in comics, the distinction between work, you can pick you pick up two different comics with two different creative teams, and they're fundamentally different on so many different areas that it's really such a rich experience.
I was rereading, this is a whole other topic for multiple episodes, but I was recently rereading Watchmen because of the movie, which I'm totally looking forward to.
Yeah.
Midnight tomorrow night. That's where I'm going to be.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing that because I could, I guess. But no, I'm going Friday. Going to have some Mexican food and then go see it. I can't help but wonder how the artwork in that comic would be colored now.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is distinctly a mid-'80s style of coloring. I mean, there's certainly a lot of other things that were being done around the same time. Like not much later than that was Batman Year One, which has beautiful colors. In fact, the hardback, if I'm not mistaken, the colors were redone. Richmond Lewis did that, and that has always been one of my favorite coloring jobs. Is on Year One, Batman Year One. It's just beautiful. That was 88, I think, or something. 87, 89, around there.
Yeah.
I can't help but wonder what Watchmen would look like. I mean, it's obviously a highly hypothetical situation, but the colors in that are really good. But I wonder if anybody has done an interview with the colorist. I think it was John Higgins, I think. Is that right? I wonder if anybody's done an interview with him about the colors on that and how, or if he would do it differently. Because I think that he oversaw the remastering of it, in the big hardback.
Yeah, in the Absolute.
Right. Yeah, the colors were remastered in that, and I think that they used those same remastered colors in the international edition of the paperback, the recent one. I've looked at those two side by side, and there's a big difference. The reds are more red in the earlier trade paperbacks and whatnot. The reds in that are more magenta-ish in the redone, newer versions. Not redone, but remastered. The reds are much more obviously red. But anyway, that's a tangent.
I'll have to pull out my issues and take a look at. I've never done that.
Yeah,
I've never looked at them side by side.
It's a big difference. Big difference.
Because when that came out, that was junior, senior year in high school for me.
Oh yeah,
all of that, and that was a great time because, like you said, Year One, all that stuff was coming out around the same time.
It was a good time to be, at that. I mean, I was a little older, I guess, but it was a good time. I was actually in college at that point, but it was a good time to be sort of like a young adult, and you're still a kid, and you grew up reading the kinds of comics that we grew up. And then, as you're becoming an adult, you get stuff like Watchmen and Dark Knight and all that. And it's like, it was at just the right time for me.
Oh, yeah.
You get these new mature comics, basically.
For me, it was at that point where you hit that stage where you're either going to jump off comics or you're going to keep reading them. And it was books like that were coming out. And
That's a good point.
I think it's why I never jumped ship. Because it was like, we were having this revitalization that was coming out of just like these really amazing new ways of storytelling that were just epic things that were coming out that were just groundbreaking.
It was a paradigm shift.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like you were totally reinvigorated and renewed into what comics can be.
And my wife walked in and looked at me like, "You still on the phone?"
Wait,
you want to say hi, honey? She's waving. She wants nothing to do with it.
Yeah, wait. And probably like, "Oh no, it's those guys again." Very patient.
Yeah, she's pretty much a saint.
Yeah, we'll get her and my wife into the same support group.
Yeah.
Although that could be dangerous for us.
Yeah, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, they should never talk.
They should never talk. Compare notes and realize, hey, wait a minute. we can do better.
We'll just meet up at cons and we'll talk. But I think we got to leave the wives out of that.
Yeah.
For our own,
I don't think I could. It would take a lot for me to get my wife to step her foot into a convention again. It's just not her thing. She just really doesn't. She walks in and goes, I don't know what I'm doing here. I walk into a convention. I think the first thing that crosses my mind is these are my people.
And that's exactly the same feeling I get. And I think you're totally right. I think if I took my wife, I keep trying to convince her. We went to a small con around here, local one, and that was great. But I think if I took her to one of the big ones, she'd be ready to choke me by the end of it.
Oh, by the end of it, halfway through, dude, a couple hours in, it's like, I gotta go. I'm not doing this again. And I made her do it once. She spent like a half day, I think, at the convention, and that was the end of it.
And I'm manic too, because I try to see everything, try to find
me too. Yeah.
All the little nuances of it. I'm like, I feel like cheated somehow if I haven't seen everything.
Right. Yeah. Makes for some tired feet.
Jumping back to the Purge here.
Okay. Back to the comic.
Otherwise, it'll be like 4 a.m.
I have work to do tomorrow, man. I gotta get some sleep.
I like a villain that's very well developed, and especially because there was two sides of the coin here. These visual sequences where we got to see them more in their true origins. I always wanted to say more human. Well, yeah, I guess more alive. But before all this happened, to see their background to it, I really appreciated these. Because we got to see like the very, the religious sage who is, trying to speak out for her people, and then all of a sudden you see it kind of almost reminded me of Jor-El and Zod, two very different, two very different philosophies that just don't mesh well together. And this Purge who just really totally believes that everything she's saying is bunk. To the point where he is so convinced and so fanatical that people are drawn to him to the point that they're willing to throw themselves off of cliffs and walk it. See, to me, forget about jumping off a cliff. That's easy.
That's one thing. All you have to do is like make that first step.
Right, and I mean that's pretty instantaneous once you hit. To walk into the water, to walk into the ocean.
Right.
I mean, you're drowning yourself.
That's power, I guess.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a toughie because you got that natural self-preservation, which would cause you to start treading water. These people are doing nothing, and they just go in and you drink in some water, glub, 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 you're dead.
Keep walking. The glow around her head on page 10, I guess it is. I must have spent a half hour getting that right. The color and the brightness and the saturation. I just mentioned that because I'm looking at it going, ugh, what a headache.
Well, but the nice thing about that was she only had a few panels of development there. And it was really important in those panels to kind of get the tone that this is an equally powerful person, that she in her own way, and she's spiritually content with who she is and with her goals or, her beliefs in how the universe should be and what is right in the universe. And it was really important to get that kind of effect from her because of how tied in she is with Korra right away, right out of the starting gate when you see her here.
Well, this kind of a page, page 10, with the montage, is an example of it's because of how it's drawn, because there's no panel borders, it really becomes the job of the colorist to make those transitions and make the flow of the page and use the colors to help tell the story. You've got about the first panel, if you want to call it that, of Orlan, and he's got his colors, but then behind his head there's a little bit of a shift from the bluish green of his house into the red of the skies over this alien world and the big battle. And then the colors of that world are behind her in the cave entrance. And then again, you see another shot of the world. And then I also use a color that's not unlike that as the glow around her head. And I think I use it in the rest of the story with her.
Is it hard? I mean, I guess you were talking about this before. When you don't have the borders and the frames like that, does that make it harder for you to...
Yeah. I mean, I have to blend of those colors. You've got, like I said, the green of his house. I did a little bit of a blend, the green of his house blending into the sky above that domed city. And then, now there's blacks in there, and that helps, of course. There's blacks at the bottom of the scene of the attack on the domed city. There's blacks there, and that helps. But then down, between the people in the cave and then another view of the world, I did a little bit of, you have to sort of like mess around. It's like I was mentioning before about how I use the reflected colors. I'll take a little bit of a color and brush it into another color to hint at, at that reflected color. I kind of did the same thing here, just manually with a brush, use a little bit of that alien world color in the shadows of the guy in the cave. And also, at the bottom of Orlan's chest emblem, there's a blend down into colors of that alien world. So it's just kind of the same thing, but it's harder, I guess. I mean, it's not hard, but it's a great way of doing a flashback, I think. Because it's more organic. It kind of flows more.
Your job is basically to make sure that also it doesn't look like all this is occurring in Orlan's belly.
Right, yeah. If he's got a pink belly, he's drinking too much Pepto-Bismol.
I really liked the layout of this, though, because it looked really cool.
Yeah.
Because you've got this sense of, from Orlan, it's the large overarching tone of him really adds a sense of, we go back to that sense of responsibility, that sense of, trying to think of what the word I'm looking for. Tragedy to this whole thing as he is describing the story. And it was funny how the layout of this really just works on so many levels of, as you said, framing a flashback sequence that you know is coming from his mind and what he experienced connected with the Purge. It really just works.
Well, I think I was struck with a situation here where, you've got a big shot of a hero here, Orlan or whatever. And so I used his basic skin tone and his nice, strong green, and then realized, well, I can't really use a green like that anywhere else. I want to make a contrast, on this page at least, with his green, and then what are the dominant colors of this world. And so I chose, sort of a magenta, kind of a pinkish, maybe purplish red, and just use that. There's a little bit of that in their skin tones, in the aliens' skin tones, and in their clothes, too. Just as a way, on this page, this is the first time that we see this world and these people, and so it just kind of worked well, and I used that the rest of the time, and conveniently, it's a Green Lantern story, and so the colors I use on them will always stand out against that green, because I'm using the pinkish color in their skin tone. Well, not pinkish, but, whatever you want to call it. I never really quite know what to call my colors, but I don't really have a background as a painter or in color theory. I just have kind of worked things out myself and just using my own artistic sensibilities.
I wonder if that's not freeing in itself, though. Because,
maybe, I do occasionally have to reference a color wheel. Although, early on I did. I don't do it anymore. But occasionally I have a book here, which I can't find right now. But it's a book, basically, that's just crammed full of color schemes. And occasionally I'll flip through it if, in the case of like a Green Lantern, well, okay, you're going to have a bunch of green. What goes well with green? What's complementary? What contrasts it? What are your options?
One of the things that I really like going through this, you have the periods where you have a slightly faded, it's still the bright colors, but it's a little bit faded. Then it goes into a big pop with the explosion, and then it goes back down to like when you see Orlan's face as he's talking late near the end, it's even a little bit paler than it was before, just showing like the emotional strain that he's going through as he's telling us, as he's basically reliving everything he saw before as if he was there again. So that was just some great emotional, just nice roller coaster these panels took you through.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's a little bit of that. Not a little bit. A lot of that is in the artwork. In that panel, I think you're talking about on page 12, the first panel on page 12, where we come back to Orlan. There's not a lot of black in that drawing of him. There's a little bit in his armor and teensy bit in his face, but there's not much black there, and that I think that helps. And yeah, I did wash it out a little bit, but I think that was sort of me reading the original art, and that happens a lot. If there's a lot of blacks in a drawing, then that tells you something. If it's a little more washed out, then that's an indicator to sort of look twice at it and work it out.
It was interesting to see that these creatures, in their own ways, became corrupted by the Purge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They have some kind of a cancerous thing going on.
Which, it's funny how it talks about purging sin and purging a society. He really has, in many ways, not only has it been about killing the people, he killed their whole economy.
Yeah.
But he also killed them through their own addiction.
Right.
Because that was kind of a nice, it adds to the sin cleanser type mindset that he has.
But these creatures are also their economy. It's
really nefarious and, what's the word? It's not invasive. What's the word?
Nefarious and bad.
Yeah, they really hit them where they lived, basically.
I gotta say, I love these moments where we see the stranger. I have the ability to read the evil in men's minds, and we see him overlooking these two men who are getting ready to take care of the children. And they're faced with a major conundrum here because they can't ignore this race of people, Orlan's race of people. They've got to do something to save them. But they've also got the problem of the children, which is an immediate problem. And I visually, that bit where the Phantom Stranger, we see this phantom of him overlooking Mr. Fish, and when they're talking about the children and what they're going to do to them and how they're becoming a liability, and just that visual piece of the Phantom Stranger, it added again that sense of, I compared him to the Watcher before because he's been that type of character where he's an observer and that type of thing. But just it shows again that we haven't seen the true limits of his power. He seems to
he's
so
great.
far. Yeah, it's a very cool character that way when he's used right. Again, I can totally see why he was chosen for this team up.
It's pretty smart.
Yeah. It's funny when you look at these two on paper, Phantom Stranger and Hal Jordan, talk about two very different worlds to come from, and how well it works in this.
Yeah, they interact in pretty interesting ways. Yeah, I'm looking at the original art right now. On the original art on page 13 here, where he's overlooking the two businessmen, and it occurred to me that the Phantom Stranger must be a really fun character to draw because you can always draw him with really dramatic lighting because he's just that way. Almost every shot of him, at least every shot of him where he's in control, kind of, is Doug has like lit him and drawn him in a dramatic way where like half or a third of his face is just in shadow. And it's great. It's just fun to play with also as a colorist because that means you've got multiple light sources, and so you can play around with that, and it makes things more dynamic, and he's a character that lends himself well to that kind of thing.
It's a great example of a character that works extremely well in comics that you would have to be very cautious if you ever tried to do him on film.
That would be neat. I think that he would be. This is pie in the sky. I don't think anyone's ever going to make a Phantom Stranger movie.
No, I don't either.
Know.
But it was just one of those things that I just dynamic-wise. But go ahead.
You need a director and a cinematographer who have a real style, who really like lighting and really like mood. I guess that goes without saying.
Yeah, but it's an interesting point though, and I think it's a compliment to this medium of comics and what you can do in it. That I think. In a way, there's certain things you can do in comics that you can translate to other mediums, but comics lend themselves to doing a character like the Phantom Stranger. Whereas on film, like you said, you would need very special people that would... Because on film, he could get very cartoony and camp very fast if you don't handle him properly with, like you're saying, the right light sources. But good comic artists, and I'm talking about everybody working on comics... They understand the tone and the mood of this character, this medium, and with the tools that you guys have, lends itself to being able to do unique and interesting characters like this in a way that I think you could do on film, but it would be hard to be able to go to the level that this character is able to do in what we see in just these issues alone.
Yeah. Well, and that's why this is one of the things that comic book fans have to keep in mind is this is why even a faithful adaptation, a movie or a TV adaptation of the comic book will always be different and do things differently. It's just because they have to. They're just different mediums. They convey information differently. It's hard sometimes to realize just how big those differences are. And they're huge.
And it's also why you can have great adaptations, but it can never replace the medium. Because the medium offers something, and in many, you can go to the other end and say film offers something that this medium doesn't. It is something that's great about comics. Comics are a very unique medium that can do some things that no other medium can do. And I think that any art form, you can say that about. And that is one of the things that's great about comics is, like you said, you can hit great adaptations, but there's going to be little tweaks. Your Green Arrow is... I really liked what you did. I love Ollie.
I went to great pains with him.
I could tell from the shading and the toning of him, because he's another one you had to play around with greens and light sourcing with him a lot because of the stealth segments here. But in particular, I loved this first shot with him, this establishing shot of him. The artwork-wise is a very cool pose, but the color tones that you used on him were staggering. And then to see the tone of him in that dive off of the top of the wall was, to me, I'm a huge Ollie fan going back to his solo series with Mike Grell, Longbow Hunters, straight on through. Actually, I'll go back to Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, Hard Traveling Heroes and all that stuff. But Ollie is one of those great characters that you can go a lot of different directions with. You can darken him up. You can brighten him up. He works on a lot of different levels. He works as a Robin Hood style character where he's real bright all the
Right.
time. He works as kind of a more where he starts to delve towards the Batman in tones, where he can sneak into environments like this, especially with all the green outside of this place. He's a very great stealthy character in these environs. Because it does go back to the Robin Hood mythos as well. He's a good character for this type of...
That's a good point. I mean, I've never been a big fan of his. Not that I don't like him. I just it's not one of my favorites. But I really enjoyed the opportunity to do my interpretation of him, at least from a coloring standpoint. Just because I'd never done him before, and also anything on this book because I'm working with great original art. It just makes it that much more enjoyable and rewarding to produce a finished product and to work on it, because it just raises your game and it makes better the art, the easier it is for my colors to look good. The more it raises my game, the more it brings out my best work, basically. I think that Doug and Bill do a really great Green Arrow. I think that he just looks the way that I think that Oliver Queen should look.
He looks, again, talk about characters that look very alive. This is very much, if Green Arrow was going to run through my backyard, I'd probably get shot with an arrow because I'd be out there asking for his autograph or something like that. But if he was, this is how I would expect him to look. I mean, he looks very alive, very real, very rich. I like functional outfits where you see like the boots, the fact that they're folded over. You see them flowing. You see the hood that's over him. You see it flowing and adjusting to wind direction, and the fact that he's jumping, and the fact that the little tiny details that I'll be honest with you, it doesn't bother me when they're not present, but I really appreciate when they are. Because I know they take a little bit more time, but that's again when I'm going through a couple more times and looking at them, like, man, is that cool that they took the time to do that. I say
know.
that so much. I've said that so many times in this book.
I always like characters that have something on their costume that moves when they move. In terms of drawing, which is where my background is, really, it gives you an extra way to indicate movement. And Green Arrow's got a whole bunch of things. He's got the boots, he's got the bottom parts of his tunic, and then the hood. And you can do all kinds of stuff. Combine it with the pose to indicate movement. It just gives you an extra, because the movement of the clothes is going to be a beat behind where the body is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it just helps to give a sense of movement and a sense that I have this argument or a theory that a great illustration. I mean, this is in general just in terms of spot illustration. If you're reading a book that has illustrated plates or whatever, that a really good illustration gives a sense that something just happened, something is happening in the image, and something's about to happen. And I think that a costume that has these extra things on it that move around helps to create that sense of something just happened.
It's funny, I'm even talking about that too, and I like that it wasn't overdone. Like, there's certain panels where it's very subtle. Mm-hmm. There's other panels where, because he's clearly moving more in those panels, it's a lot more prevalent. And I really liked that as well. That sense of balance, like it fit wherever he was at that particular point in time. Especially when he's like, you see him more stationary, like when he's looking over the guards and or he's standing in a doorway about ready to walk in, where he's got to be stationary because he's scoping out what's going on ahead of him. Those are moments where I really appreciated, that it was a lot more subtle, not as strong and vivid a movement as when it was clear that he was ready to jump or he just stopped in place or something like that. Mm-hmm. It was quite interesting. I
made a point with him, and as soon as I knew that he was going to be in the story, I knew that this would happen. I made a point with him of making the different parts of his costume slightly different shades of green, just because. I don't have a problem with colorists that make it all of the same green. That's fine. It's certainly it's easier and it makes sense, and why not? But just because I'm that way, and if you think about it realistically, if they're made of different materials, they're not going to be exactly the same color. And so I tried to make the belt, the gloves, and the boots a little bit more like leathery, a little bit warmer, I guess. And anyway, it's just another example of my noodly color choices. I like making these distinctions, just especially on artwork like this that's really nuanced. I think that it requires nuances on my part. So.
Yeah, and you can really see, especially the one sequence when he's drawing back and he's in the firefight, with the one guy.
Yeah.
You can see the glove there, the hood, because it's got the light coming in, has the lighter section that fades into a darker green. Same thing with his tunic, that, it has where the light source is coming in, then it just blends into that. And, so yeah, that looks really cool.
That is one muscly arm, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? But that would fit being an archer especially.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Because the stabilization muscles alone of holding that bow in place, you're not talking about just the power to draw it back. You're talking about the power to hold it steady, which is a huge difference. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's got to have arms that are that are ripped not only for power, but there's little tiny muscles of his that would be toned because of that stabilization. I love that shot in particular just because of the way the light sourcing worked off the muscles, because you very rarely get to see, because depending on what, if you're shooting a distance shot where you get to see him pulling back his bow, you very rarely get to see a close-up of what his arm looks like when it's doing that. That felt very real to me. Because he's a human. He's not. This isn't a meta-human guy. This is a human guy who's really just that strong because of how much he does this.
Yeah, and the Doug Braithwaite, I really like looking at his anatomy, his renderings. It's not him himself. I've never met him, but he's obviously really. I like the way that he renders anatomy. I did a lot of studying of anatomy as an illustrator myself. It's kind of where my roots are, is looking at anatomy, and I really like his stuff.
It's interesting enough, I heard an interview with him where he said he likes your anatomy too, so it's
oh God. We've never met, I swear. He's seen no pictures of me that I'm aware of.
But you're right. It really, because it wasn't overdone, it fit this character. This is an archer, and everything about that sequence makes perfect sense for this character. It was a realism to it. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think especially with a character like Green Arrow, he needs that realism. He needs lots of realism.
These poor kids. Every time I see them, you can't help but feel for them because they've got such a horrible existence.
This is not a good place to be.
No, not at all. I couldn't believe that Green Arrow was shot in the head. I mean, it grazed him, yes, but it was enough to take him out at this point in time. And that intensity was something you don't normally get to see that on that level. And I really liked that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's probably not enough blood in that sequence on his head. I mean, when he's laying down, I think that there was supposed to be more blood. I didn't really emphasize it enough, I don't think. But
there comes a point, though, where you wanted him knocked out, not dead. So I think it did work on that end, because it was clear to me that this guy was... he didn't kill him.
He's dead. Green Arrow's dead. Got him.
Yeah.
Well, Green Arrow has a habit of coming back, so it's okay.
Yeah, he's done that before.
Yep.
I liked how we gradually got closer and closer to him, though, to see what he was going through. And that worked with his internal dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
That he is, even though he's out of it, there's that part of him that's... I don't know if he's fighting to regain consciousness or fighting not to lose consciousness or what he's doing in that end. There's some kind of inner struggle going on with him, though, where he's like, I gotta get moving here. It's there's a kid's life at stake and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Almost leads me to believe that he's not quite unconscious, but he's fighting to keep from going there.
It's another example of the character that has no powers. All he has is his willpower. That's all he's got. That and some skill with a bow.
Well, what an intense spot to leave him in, though, because as all this is going on, they're ready to burn the place down. Wait, talk about evil again, too. These
guys are bad.
I mean, they're ready to burn the place to the ground, blow the place up with the kids alive in there. So it's not even. I mean, honestly, there would be more mercy if they went in and shot all the kids and then did all that.
I know. It's like, how far are you going to go to prove that you're bad?
I know, but I mean, talk about a total I mean, this is not the way you want it. You're burning everyone alive.
See,
Yeah.
I kind of took it as they're more amateurs than professionals. Because a true professional, once Green Arrow was down, would have put like 2 or 3 more into him just to make sure. Because the guy looks at him and sees, oh, yeah, I see some blood. I see he's not, oh, he's dead. Oh, okay. No, you make sure. You put a couple more in him just in case.
Well, the problem is that these bad guys always have plans and an agenda, so they have to move on to the next thing, you know.
In fairness, though, Ollie doesn't really get up on his own. If it wasn't for Cora,
Oh, yeah.
he would have been a goner.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then we see Orlan here using his powers. And that was back, you were asking earlier if we do see Orlan. Here's a nice spot where we get to see Orlan and the distinction between the two, which, again, I did appreciate how that stood out amidst all of this. Because really, and he talks about it too, the planet's economy is going to have to be completely restructured now. And I almost think now from this whole sequence that Orlan might be okay. Like, he's finding a new purpose in the sense that it just shows the survival instinct of people. And I think good comics can do this, whether it's an alien race or all that, bring out the best of how people deal with turmoil, how people deal with tragedy, and that they find a new purpose somehow out of tragedy. There's something that will open a doorway, and people do tend to leap towards those new purposes and step up to the plate. And that's where comics do often give you hope, like with this guy. Because he does seem to, his facial-wise, it's not as intense as we get to the end here.
It's a little more somber and more sort of, like he's had this realization, like, okay, I know it has to be done now. Granted, all these awful things have happened, but I'm a Green Lantern. I've got this ring. I can do something about it. I can help. And I kind of like the idea of him becoming now not just a Green Lantern, but a Green Lantern and also the hero of his planet. Kind of. The like main hero on his world. And
it's funny how it's something that the Purge didn't get, that a lot of times redemption and seeking redemption will bring a purity to a place. Like, he's finding here that he's actually taking elements of what the Purge did and saying, maybe in the long run this will be something good for my people. We'll find a new purpose, we'll find a new life, and it is a strength of spirit, and it's where this story has some cool messages in it as it continues going on. Especially when the Purge is faced with having to deal with this later.
Yeah, there's another example here. I love this pose of Green Lantern in the first panel of this 2-page spread, pages 20-21. It's just a great flying superhero pose, and Green Lantern just looks great there. Another example of Doug's awesome anatomical rendering, I think.
It's another reason why I said I really do want this in hardcover, because I would love to. This is a piece of work where I can see myself paging through it because of spreads like this, where you get to see this wonderful sequence. It's
I can see flaws in it. Of course, I'm looking at it going, I should have done something else with the smoke. It kind of blends in too much. Yeah.
This last page is one of those moments where I started to realize, oh no.
Heck.
Yeah. It's and Orlan hasn't picked it up yet, but it's clear from the stranger's demeanor he's not saying anything.
Right, he's
Orlan
looking at Hal.
Yeah. Orlan says, I pity his victim. It's a terrible thing to feel your will slowly slipping away. And he's just quiet. He's looking. As Orlan's continuing to speak right over there, and that's where we get to see, oh, no. It's another cool cliffhanger moment in this particular story.
And I got that last panel, in the original art, that last panel that has a blue in it right now, it was just blank. And I was like, well, what do I put there? I mean, there's a description in the script. It says something like, to be continued, or whatever the text is.
To be concluded.
Right, okay, yeah. And I thought, it seemed like, basically I just used the colors of Purge there. It just seemed like, the right thing to do. Because he's being, overtaken by Purge, and I've got an empty panel. Okay, I'll put some Purge colors in it.
It was amazing the journey that you went on where you started to discover things through the reactions of the Phantom Stranger. Or, like, Cora. I learned a lot of things by the way Cora was carrying herself. I liked that through a lot of times the art is where I was learning the things that were going on in the story. I like little mysteries that slowly build where if you're paying attention, you get clued into what's going on before the story actually flat out tells you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's hopefully that happens a lot. It's good storytelling.
Now, the cover of 22.
Yay! This is
yeah.
the first thing I did, actually.
Oh, really? Okay, so you got this.
Yeah, this is the first thing I did, which is actually was a pretty good proving ground because it's got all the characters that I had to use, basically. Not all of them, but I worked out the look of the interior of Cora's mind, or whatever, that weird mind space, the crystal realm, and also get my colors worked out on Green Lantern and Green Arrow. I did a few passes on it. I actually it might be interesting if I sent you guys the 3 versions of this I did. There's like an initial version that I showed Doug and Bill, and then an adjusted version, and then like a final version. Just based on all the notes that went back and forth.
How is that? Do you enjoy that interaction? I mean, that's how, as far as being able to interact with the pencilers and the inkers and being able to have that kind of team relationship when you're working on a book?
Yeah, it's early on it's intimidating because I know Doug Braithwaite's work and his name. He's pretty much a big name, and Bill Reinhold's been making comics since the mid '80s. Man, not intimidating, but initially I took the suggestions and the pointers and the critiques a little too personally. I was like, I suck. You come back going, oh, I'm screwing up. I don't know what I'm doing, and then. I usually have that at the beginning of any new project. I kind of grope around for a few days or a few pages because I have this feeling like I don't know what I'm doing yet. And then you get used to it, and you kind of learn. In the case of a comic where you're interacting a lot with the other artists, you learn what they want and what they're after, and you learn how they communicate. And even if you're not interacting with the artists, after a while, you get the hang of what the pages ought to look like.
We take a look on the inside of this book. I keep forgetting that the doctors were in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about cleaning house. It was very horror movie when we see Cora kind of walking through the fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the effect I was going through. There was a little bit of a challenge there in making her obviously lit by the fire, but also to give her a quality in terms of color that made her stand out. Because when you're standing like right in the middle of fire, you're going to lose most of your own colors. But and so it's just a trick of striking a balance and making her stand out, but also look weird because she should look weird, and also be lit by the flames. And flames are always a little tricky because you have to ask yourself, how bright are they going to be? In reality, they're so bright you can't look at it, but you have to be able to look at it. You can't just leave a bunch of white there. It has to be orangey and yellow. And there's always a frequent problem I have, because we're dealing with comic books is how much do you use, I guess I was talking about this earlier, how much do you use the colors of the characters' costumes, and how much do you realistically change them based on the light? One
of the things I appreciated, this addressed what you mentioned before, Jim, was the fact that it was Cora, when she's touching Ollie, that all of a sudden he snaps awake. And you see that visual with him, the shock. Like it was an intense, quick moment for him where it's just being, it's like you'd shake somebody awake, but he doesn't have that luxury of it being like 2 or 3 shakes. It's like one intense, like, get up, dude. And this sequence right now where the credits are, being able to see, you need to get up now or everyone will die. There's a bomb in the basement. You have 3 minutes before it goes off. It's one of those moments where it's like, oh, Mom, do I have to go to school?
I just got shot, kid. Give me a break.
Yeah, but you don't have time for a break or you're going to blow up real good.
Are you a superhero or aren't you?
But I like
that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I like you see the close-up of Ollie right here. I love that you see the intensity in Ollie of that he's not just jumping up. it's work for him to get up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's been through the ringer, and Cora got him back up, and I love he's still clutching his head as we get to see him, but then he slips back on the hood, and he's all back to business, and that really is a landmark, trademark of a hero, in the sense that, it's gut check time, and Ollie is stepping up to the plate.
Yep.
And I really
hero time.
Yeah. And I
love that.
Good.
I love that drawing of him jumping through the flames. I just think it's a really great pose. It's really well rendered. It's just really well done.
And again, the color distinction from what he looks like when he's clutching his head in the panel earlier, it's very subtle. But again, because of the fire effects and things like that, he looks there's a distinction to him because of that, and I like those details.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just realized on the previous page, the splash page, you have him, and I could have lit him the same way here, because I could certainly make the argument that there's a lot of fire there. His green might not stand out that much, but he's only on this page once, and so you kind of need that green there to say that's Green Arrow. On the next page, you get a couple shots of him, and so you can play around some with that when he's jumping through the flames. You've established on the previous page and also on this page that's Green Arrow. His costume's green. Now he's jumping through the flames, and it doesn't need to be as green because you have him in the previous panel there being obviously green. So you sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can't. I think it's kind of tricky.
I think it also helps with that splash page that we're looking right at him. He's in the foreground for us.
Right.
We are very close in proximity to him. It's almost like you feel like you can reach out and touch him and say, "Hey, fella, you can do it."
Come on.
Give him a little nudge.
You've still got a bunch of arrows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked how her eyes on the one page just really pop, because she's all orange and reds, and those boom, you can just see the eyes in the middle. That was a cool looking effect there.
Yeah, I kind of had to. I mean, it almost screamed out for it. It's like you want her to be creepy and kind of ghostly, because I'm not even sure if she's really there. I'm not entirely certain if she's gotten up and walked out, or is that just an astral projection, or what?
Yeah, I took that pure astral projetion.
Yeah,
that's why I kind of chuckle.
I guess so. Yeah.
I kind of chuckle when Ollie's like, "Girl, if you can do it, I can." And well, the way she can do it is she's not actually there, dude. You're getting actually burned.
Yeah, Ollie, you might want to wake up. She's not there.
Although
I wanted those eyes to stand out, so I just used that real blue, the brighter blue that I was talking about earlier. How I had two different colors for her eyes.
I guess another way that I took it though is with Sage being inside her. I took it that there was a possibility that she was up and walking around with the Sage's power inside her, similar to what we've seen with the Purge.
Yeah.
I could see it both ways, though. I could see the astral thing. When you guys were saying that, I was like, well, no, that kind of makes sense to me, too. So I could see it going either way. But when I initially read it, I took it as Sage being inside her, similar to what we saw with the Purge. But I'm not sure, because we don't see her outwardly representing herself like the Purge does, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
It was an interesting mystery.
This the panel at the bottom of page 3 here with Hal and Phantom Stranger arriving. The outline of the green glow here. I had a conversation with Bill about this. How I understand that it's like a standard comic book thing, but the glow, that green glow, really makes no sense. It really doesn't, and it really bugs me because I'm dealing with really realistic art here, and I try to make my coloring, as a result, realistic. And then you have this effect you have to add. I mean, there's a couple options. You can do the standard green glowing outline, which is usually how it's done. In fact, it's pretty much always how it's done these days. But if you ask yourself, okay, if they're glowing green, it wouldn't look like that because it would be green all over, or at least have a lot of green over the existing colors. And if it's just a shell, an energy shell, it would have that outline, but you would still also be adding a bunch of green into their hair color and their skin color and everything else. And so, but if you do that, then it doesn't look the way it's usually done, and it looks like it makes them look a little ghostly. And so it's just there's no good way around it. I had this conversation with Bill that I hate this glow, but there's no other way around it, really.
And it's obviously done that way for just what you're saying, because of the fact that you don't want to lose the fact that the Phantom Stranger's always styling, And
Yeah.
and you got Hal's iconic outfit in there. Oh, you're right. You know what would happen is you wouldn't ever see Hal's outfit.
No, I mean, it depends, of course, on how bright it is, but
Right.
if it's not real bright, then it's just going to be like a haze around him. It would look different. It's one of those things that it's one of those things that makes it hard for me to read a Green Lantern comic, or especially a Green Lantern Corps, or, in recent years, there's been a lot of stories with lots of Green Lanterns in one place, in lots of scenes. And it just hurts my eyes, kind of. And I don't mean that disparagingly of any other colorist. It's just how it's done, but it just hurts my eyes. That's because it just doesn't make any sense to me. I look at it and everything's got this green line around it, and it's one of my pet peeves.
So you actually root for some of the other Lantern colors then?
Yeah, I want more colors in there. Sure. No, because they still have that same line around them.
They still have the glow.
Right.
They still have that same weird line that doesn't really make any sense. It reminds me of the. Do you remember on the Star Trek animated series, they had those belts that would give them a life support force field, and they had a glowing line around them. It just reminds me of that, and that also doesn't really make any sense. But
that was
at least
funny
not the way it's rendered.
And that animated series was funny because they did try to go with tech that they could never have done in a million years in the original series.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a force field belt. That's more like Legion of Superheroes stuff.
I like this bit with Ollie where he's coming out because we see the establishing shot that Hal and the Phantom Stranger just landing on the scene to try and determine what's going on. And Ollie's just barely making it out with no time to spare with the bomb. And especially after Phantom Stranger was just saying, oh, maybe I made the wrong choice for the champion. I loved the visual effect of the explosion. The fact that it wasn't just contained where the explosion was, but that there was like a shock wave from afterwards that affected the ground, that affected the area around Ollie. We even see it. It's beautiful because we see the colors affecting that whole sequence as well. But again, back to the functional outfit, we see it affecting the boots. We see it affecting, the shirt, the tunic around the waist, and of course, once again, the hood that he's wearing. I loved that moment. It was visually very pleasing as well because you see the light kind of flashing from all around Ollie in all different areas, kind of like it's a mini sun, which was a really nice sequence.
It's a really nice drawing. It's just really well done, and I really love the shots of there's multiple instances of this here, and when you're looking down the shaft of the arrow at Green Lantern. I always like those. I like the way they're drawn, and I like coloring them. It's just, I don't know why. It's just fun. Every superhero has a few, I don't know what to call them, signature poses or moves or the way they stand. Green Arrow being the guy with the bow and the arrows. This is one of his, and so it's always neat.
But especially when you're standing down, it's like standing down the barrel of a gun. You're standing down that arrow looking at you right in the face, and it's like, I get why people would be intimidated by the fella. Mm-hmm. From that perspective, it's like, okay, look at the determination in those eyes. Yeah. And what he's doing is he's pulling this back. All right, I get it.
This is the pose that lets you know you're about to get your butt kicked. It's that. Yeah. Superman has the dun-da-da kind of stance, and that's Ollie's dun-da-da stance.
Yeah. Superman's got that hands on the hips thing, that I'm here to save the day. And Batman's, usually in like mid-jump, jumping on someone with the cape out and all that. And Green Arrow he's got that mask and the eyes squinting because he's angry and he's aiming, or if not angry, certainly purposeful. And we all know what bows and arrows do and how strong you have to be to draw one back. And so I always like those shots.
Tiny detail here that I really liked in the dialogue. It was the Phantom Stranger who set what the split up was going to be like. That Ollie was going to go after the guys who set the fire, but that they were going to go take care of the fire, making sure that he was with Hal, which was a nice little setup for where this was going. But I really liked that little tone of effect that it was the Phantom Stranger that did the team up. But then we flash to, again, more Ollie action, which totally fits Ollie in the sense that, when Ollie gets behind something, whether it's a cause, moral, whatever, Ollie can be a hothead. But Ollie's a hothead because he passionately believes in things. Whether he's right or wrong, Ollie will stick with his passions and follow through with them. In this case, these guys were trying to kill kids. And that's not going to fly with Green Arrow. And you can see right now that he is going to put a world of hurt on these guys because of that fact.
Yeah. This pose of the on panel 5, not panel 5, page 5. Page 5? Yeah, page 5, the third and fourth panels, it just occurred to me, they really remind me of Mike Grell drawings.
Oh, yeah.
The stance that Green Arrow has there as he's walking towards us, and then the medium close-up of him aiming at the arrow. Just look at a heavy Mike Grell influence there.
It reminded me very much of stuff that I had really enjoyed in Longbow Hunters and that whole series that proceeded afterwards. Because he was wearing the hood in that. It's very much that kind of...
Yeah, it's not just a hood, though. What's interesting about his hood is that it's a hood that has a peak, which I think is a nice touch. I don't know who designed that, but it was a nice touch in terms of a costume design. It adds an angularity which just a hood wouldn't do.
This next page has that cool moment that I was talking about with Phantom Stranger. We get the close-up of him. I really liked how the eyes were done in that. Because, a lot of times when we see the close-up of the Phantom Stranger's eyes, you just see the white in the eyes because you're trying to show that he's this mystical character and everything like that. And that works for him. Except in this case with the close-up, it was really important for that little line that's in the eye that shows the eyeball. It shows the pupil of the eye to be there for that slight distinction because it shows that sly look back that he's doing that shows that I'm watching him.
That's a good... I hadn't noticed that. I mean, I knew that line was there, but you're right. It indicates where he's looking. And it also gives a sense, because we don't always see it, the fact that we see it here means that there's something going on, basically, Which
is cool because this is the point, the first time that we see, and you see it in the dialogue balloons themselves actually physically changed to show, but Hal, the way he's carrying himself, the colors that are coming off him now, it's clear we are seeing visually the Purge taking a more outward presence with Hal now that it's walked away from the Phantom Stranger.
This is the fun of being a colorist in that you can not exactly foreshadow things, but you can lead into things with color. You can, by lighting, you're having multiple sources of lighting or with a special effect. Here I'm reintroducing the Purge colors, basically. And
these are moments where, because it does lead to later, Hal confronts the Phantom Stranger on the fact that if you knew all this, why didn't you tell me? And the fact that he's, referencing here, I share the mind and memories of Hal Jordan. I know the sins of this world called Earth. These are moments where the second he's connected with Hal, if Hal knew that the Phantom Stranger was onto him, none of this would have been possible, this trap that's being laid out. And I love this, how he's being drawn in because he senses the innocence of Cora. And you see that visually in the way that he's kind of calmly touching her at this moment and kind of trying to figure out his next move and starts having this dialogue. It leads to this whole, and I love that we see on this next page the duality of both the Purge and Hal Jordan in the purplish and the greenish color being pulled out of Hal and into the mind of Cora. It was interesting that both of those essences would be yanked out from Hal's body.
Yeah, that was a weird thing to color. I actually wound up using a lot of layers on Hal there when he's being split because I wanted to use the green colors and the purple colors and his own normal colors. So there's a bunch of layers in that original file.
Now, I like that we see Hal. You're talking about the glow. We don't see him in the traditional green glow.
Right.
When the Phantom Stranger walks up and talks about the trap being sprung. There's a different glow about him that shows he's in a state of a trance or a mystical
stasis.
State. Yeah, stasis. That's very good. I like that. It's one of those moments that kind of establishes that right away. And we get this visual of, and I really liked this place, the internal part of her mind. Everything is very, clean surfaces. It's very crystalline. It looks like, he's referencing it as a perfect place. It looks like a place where, like, you walking around through it, you're not going to see dirt. You're not going to see anything but clean surfaces. And, nothing looks decaying. Nothing looks like any of that. So you got these two guys in here, and it's funny how both of them look so much dirtier than this place.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. It looks like a place, actually, where you don't have to walk. You would just fly around.
It's almost like a heaven in Purge's eyes, which is interesting. The girl still has that untarnished purity of a child, and the Purge wishes to rid the world of filth. So it was interesting that and when we see Sage, after these two have their initial confrontation, which just doesn't work out for Hal, when we see Sage kind of introduced as we're going through the battle between Hal and the Purge, it's interesting to see that she almost seems to belong in this place because of the color tone surrounding her more than either of them do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's intentional. I've made a connection between the color of this interior world and the Sage. Yeah,
the Sage kind of has home court advantage.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
She's got two things going on. She's trying to get rid of the Purge and trap the Purge, but she's also an advocate and showing again that she is operating on a different level. She's an advocate for Cora and is trying to hopefully, let this poor kid have something that she's never really had, a life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting how you have this big story involving these really powerful characters on an interstellar scale, and it's really all just about this little girl in a hospital.
I love the bit where the Purge is talking about, you can, try to keep me from Hal Jordan's mind and all that, but I'll easily go grab another host, and who am I going to go after? Let's go for your more powerful guy. Let's go with Superman.
Yeah. The first time I've ever colored Superman, so.
Really?
Really? Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. I tried to make him look glorious.
I forgot with your JLA issue.
Yeah, it's just the two of them.
Right, yeah.
no Superman. I mean, I remember being disappointed by that when I heard from Gene. He said, hey, you want to work on an issue of the Justice League? And I thought, yeah, that'd be awesome. Turns out, there's a flashback in that issue with the Flash, and we see Geoforce, I think, and somebody else, but it's just like one panel, and it's pretty small, too. So, yeah, it's my first Superman.
Again, we see the Phantom Stranger's power kick into place, and it was funny. At this point, we see here that the Purge is powerful enough that the Phantom Stranger can't directly destroy him. It's really more so that he can trap him in there long enough that hopefully the Sage can keep him in place until... And they're really waiting this out until Cora dies.
Yeah.
Cora's dying mind would be the ultimate trap that neither the Sage or Purge can escape, and that would keep the balance in place, is what the Phantom Stranger wants.
And she's okay with that, too, Sage, I think, right? Yeah.
She's very content. And every time you see her, she's very calm, very content. This is the plan. This is in the cards. It needs to be done. Her only concern is making sure that the Purge stays in there with her.
There was a weird coloring challenge on this page 14, with the one the Phantom Stranger is containing Purge's explosion of power, in that you've got the Purge and a kind of light that he generates, which is it's like black light, sort of bluish purplish, and then you've got the Phantom Stranger's his special effects. I was always using like yellows, hot yellows for his special effects. But then the question becomes, okay, you've got the Purge's emitting this bluish light, but he's contained in a shell of this yellow light, and so how do you light things that are outside of that shell? I couldn't really quite work it out. I just moved on. I'm not sure if I achieved it or not. I think I did okay.
Well, it looked to me like the stuff that you were lighting outside, it was almost a combination of the effects, of the after effects of the two powers, because I'm seeing a lot of the blues. I'm seeing some of the yellow effects. It's almost like the glow from off of the various power sources at work here.
Okay. Well, cool.
So that kind of worked for me. When Hal comes to and they're in the hospital room, you talked about how you would have liked to have done the red framing in the early part of the issue. You did do it here when Hal's angry and chastising the Phantom Stranger, which really set the motion here for the tone that Hal is going off at this point. This is not the Hal that we saw in this first moment where Orland finally came to initially, and Phantom Stranger did, where he was feeling regret and all that. This is a Hal right now that is very bitter that he's been played and that he was not clued into the mission. And I really liked just how this all played out, because you see his anger and his intensity, but the Phantom Stranger, again, remains the stoic calm.
That's his job.
Yeah. And it worked so well here because he's laying it out and, even explaining again, how harshly he's going to judge himself from all this. He made mistakes during the way. There were choices he made, or, because he didn't act fast enough, because he was willing to give it all up. Being the Phantom Stranger, he's like one of those characters. It's funny. I think he's so cool. I would never in a million years want to be the Phantom Stranger, because he's another one of those tragic existences. Because it seems like he's constantly driven by responsibility to his higher power, responsibility to everyone else.
And he's got to make amends for stuff he's done, I think. And,
right.
There's a sentencing.
And I like that kind of distinction. It's interesting to read a character who's in that capacity.
You do not want that gig.
No.
I'll take a power ring, though. That'd be kind of cool.
Sure, yeah, I'll take a power ring. Yeah. As long as it's a green one. I think you're better off with the green, I think.
It's funny how the mood changes when we get into page 16.
Yeah.
Especially because at this point in time, you start to see that the Purge is unsure of himself. It's still fighting to stand for what he's believed in for so long. But Cora's being there was an interesting chess move from Sage. And she doesn't refer to him as Purge, she refers to him as Toba. And going back to the given name and all that. But I do like that we see in his tone here a little less power, a little less intensity. Even when he's defending himself to Cora, she comes back with some one-liners that are just still. I would have liked to have lived my own life. What do you say to that? This is a girl. This is the purity that he was seeking is standing right in front of him. And I've seen you hurting people. I've felt what you do to them. I would have liked to have had my own life. These are all things that he has no argument for. They philosophically, she is what he was striving for, and that was purity. She's standing right there, and she's coming up with very compelling arguments. As far as, and I love that Sage jumps in after she let her do a couple of zingers, and I'm taking that opening to shove my foot in the door and say, I can show you how to pass the energy to her as we depart for the next world. You got to let this girl live.
You have to love a hero, in this case, the Sage, whose solution involves essentially extending a hand to the guy that has done an awful lot of evil. And she's perfectly content, essentially, forgive him if he'll just do this one thing.
And it's funny, there's a connection then between the Sage and Cora, who's also trying to live so she can forgive the doctor, who obviously, Dr. Treves comes to the room, sits beside her, talks to her, and she understands everything that he's saying and how, he's feeling remorseful, and she would like to make that connection with him to say, I get it. And you know what? That, to me, is the innocence of a child as well. Because I can believe a kid would do this.
Yeah.
It really is one of those things. An adult wouldn't. It would have to be, I think, I shouldn't say every adult wouldn't, but I would say on the average, we get more worldly as we get older. We've seen good and evil on both sides. Things aren't just black and white anymore with us. They're also shades of gray, which means we tend to hold on to things longer because of that. Whereas her as a child, she still sees hope in things and sees the possibility of, hey, this man made mistakes, but he's crying. He's asking for forgiveness. He comes and visits me. He talks to me. I want to give him that chance. I think that's something only a kid would do on that level, and I do believe that worked.
Yeah, and well, it's interesting as you were talking about that. I realized the parallels here. I mean, just speaking as a parent, the parallels between you can think of Purge as if you want to think at a conceptual level, as a guy. As a parent, you want your children to be, well, not perfect, but you want them to behave a certain way. Obviously, you want them to be certain things. And we have a character here who is striving for a really weird version of perfection. And again, as a parent, a lot of times my overreaching as a parent, or me losing my cool or losing my temper, or whatever, all you have to do is stop and really look at the child, and you realize, oh, I'm being a dope. You're the smart one here. They really do have an ability to move on. They're highly, incredibly adaptable. Children are more adaptable than we are because because their long-term memory is not as good, or they're just more able to kind of slough things off and go, well, I'll be happy now.
Yeah.
And they have go ahead, Jim.
Well, they don't hold the grudges, and it's just that it seems. I don't know if it's because as we get older, we get a little more cynical, and our memories are a little bit longer, and it's. Your responses, you're taught that, hey, someone wronged me once, they may wrong you again. Whereas a child is like, hey, it's not what, it's what's going on now. And it's that, it's,
yeah. But children are much more present in the moment just because they don't have they're not as good at imagining the future. They're not as good at consciously connecting the past to the present and the future, I guess, maybe. Yeah, and so it's interesting here that I'm glad you pointed that out, Sean. That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it from that angle.
I really liked it. It was something that I just thought was an interesting distinction throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
We start going to the grounds of Arcadia, and Ollie at this point, I love
being Ollie.
Yeah. It's like right here, please, I'm putting the gun down, I'm giving up, and all that stuff. And I like that Ollie, it's not about killing anybody or anything like that, but Ollie's not against,
a little retribution.
Yeah, I got an arrow for you.
I got 3 arrows for y'all.
Yeah, and I love that moment because it was, again, everybody, and I like the distinction that he has arrows that are for the purpose of taking people down.
Yeah, like rubber-tipped arrows or something. They're like rubber blunt ball arrow heads.
Right. But again, another one of these shots, and this, again, I love these moments when we zoom into the face.
Yeah.
Because we get to see tiny details of the facial expression. Again, a different emotion, though, when we see this guy up close than any of the previous offerings. And every one of them has been unique in their own way. This one, it's very much a sly grin. Did I give you permission to leave?
You're messing with the wrong superhero, man.
Yeah, and I love those moments because you feel like you're standing right there looking at him. You want to, say, give me another panel with me high-fiving him.
And another panel with me running away.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is.
Because he's kind of scary.
Yeah, but I mean that's where it all works.
Yeah,
and then eventually he frees the doctors, and I really liked that we got to see here too because she wants to Cora wants to live to this one doctor with the glasses on, Dr. Trevis wants to forgive this guy. I love that when his what am I thinking of?
His gag.
Yes, that word. Yes, that word. I'm not good with 3-letter words.
Yeah.
His gag is taken off, and the first thing out of his mouth is the children. It really shows that this guy is in a very different place than perhaps he was when these experiments started. He's reached his breaking point, where these other guys are all about covering things up and all that. In his case, it's been about, he is the guy that was sitting there with this girl at night. He is the guy that was looking for that forgiveness, to the point where he's willing to blackmail the people that are trying to kill them in order to make sure that these murder, these killings and attempted killings all stop, so that way these kids can live and be protected. Interesting switch and shift with this guy, and you got to wonder. It's funny how much I would love to see some of the things that we didn't get to see on screen, because you can't do everything.
Right.
I would love to see a side story with just the background of how he got from A to B, what made him twist and all that. And that's a good drama, makes you think that through in your head anyway, because you can't show everything ever. You start thinking about the things that went on off camera, even though you're never going to see them. But that's where the story kind of goes beyond the pages sometimes, and that works.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of what I was saying before about a good illustration, spot illustration suggests something just happened, something is happening here in the image, and something's about to happen. A good writer or any kind of a creator generally is trying to create a world, but they've just isolated a few things in that world that they're going to focus on.
It's totally interesting to me when we see Cora in the bed, and you see that purple tone around her. Now that to me was the sage and Purge leaving her. We get to see that power of them kind of, and then you see it through her lips blatantly that they're coming out at that point. And she dies because they were what was keeping her alive. But you get that twinge of hope, and I took this totally as it was because they said they needed Purge's energy. This is Purge releasing some energy to let this poor girl live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In that sequence.
Yeah, I think maybe I may have miscolored that light above her head there. But I'd have to look at the script again to remember why I used yellow. And
it could be a different kind of energy because, at this stage...
it's the cleansed energy from the Purge. It's no longer, tainted. It's no longer,
corrupted.
Corrupted.
Okay, sure, yeah. Thanks, man.
I got your back. I got
your back, man. All right. Jim's got my back.
I honestly didn't give it a second thought. I took it that it was different energy myself because of the fact that Purge was releasing it for this purpose of life, whereas before everything was about destroying everything. So it really is a different purpose.
Yeah, I think maybe I was associating it with the Phantom Stranger for some reason. Maybe that's why I made it yellow. I don't know. This was one of the last pages, and you always wind up being in a hurry on the last pages. So I was just going to say, as the deadline approaches, it's just you sort of start moving on
because you got to get the book out.
Right. Yep.
Dr. Trevis comes in at this point, and I was glad to see this moment because throughout this story, it was about redemption for a lot of people. It was about responsibility, but it was also about this conflict between good and evil, and how forgiveness is something that is necessary in life. Being able to forgive people gives them a chance to turn their life around, to make penance for the sins that they have. In this way, it's really clear that she's got no other family to go to. It's all going to be. I'm convinced Dr. Trevis is going to take care of her. At this point.
Yeah.
And just that emotional moment where they're welling up really worked for me. And, Phantom Stranger kind of closes out the issue explaining to us, that every life is sacred.
His job, yes, making the closing statement.
I liked that, how it felt like classic Phantom Stranger in the sense that, a lot of times when we see this from the Phantom Stranger, it's because he is narrating the story that we're witnessing, the overarching narrator. He's not actually the physical one involved. And in this case, we get to see him physically involved in the story and kind of closing it out and telling us the moral. And that's one to grow on and that type of thing.
One to grow on.
Yeah.
God. Thank you for the 80s reference.
Hey, I'm here for you, man.
Oh, man.
I watch too much Saturday morning cartoons.
Not possible.
Yeah. No, apparently it's not.
I'm still watching them. That's another subject.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very, very cool series of issues. I really enjoyed this work. And I'm glad that we had a chance to... It's been too long since we've had you on the show. I'm glad we had
I know. I was going to say the same thing. It's been too long.
Yeah. And, probably the reason why is because we put you through a marathon whenever you come on. I was trying to give you an exit after the first issue. Because when we were done with the first issue, I was looking at the time. I'm like, boy, we've given him, a good hour and a half here, and figuring that, I'm like, oh, well, we'll be kind to him and give him, if you want to do a breaking point and we'll come back again. I forget that you're fully indoctrinated and you'll do the marathon. We need to start giving out T-shirts to people that survive these. I survived a Raging Bullets marathon and I've lived to tell about it.
Marathon interview. I've been down this road before. Yeah.
Oh, you're a wily veteran.
A wily veteran. I'm old crotchety. I'm an old grognard.
Well, if you are, then we're like ancient. So it's like. But
I'm glad you guys liked it. I really enjoy working on original art that's this good because it makes it a joy to work on, and that means that my work just looks that much better.
I want to encourage any of our listeners, if you didn't pick this up, it's 19, 20, 21, and 22, the 4-issue art. And artwork from part 2, 3, and 4 on this series. And it's visually just a wonderful piece. The story is very rich. It's definitely something, if you missed it, it's nice and contained, so you can pick up these 4 issues and really enjoy reading them.
That's the great thing about Brave and the Bold of this series is they've got those nice little arcs, and then they change characters, or they kind of, segue.
It's what I liked about Legends of the Dark Knight and books like that, too. They're, with those contained arcs, they go to a new creative team, so it's a different story every time. So, if one story's not your flavor, you can leap off it, but you can also come back to the book later and really kind of delve into what's going on here. This, to me, was just a blast and a half of it was a deep, rich story. And it was a team-up that I was kind of like, am I even going to like this team-up? And it was quite the opposite, I think, because they're so drastically different in tone and how they carried themselves. I really found that thematically it worked really well, and the art seemed to thrive off of it.
It does seem like an odd pairing, yeah.
I hope this is collected. For myself, I really genuinely...
probably will be, I would imagine. Why not?
Yeah, well, they've been collecting everything else, and... my personal hope is not in trade in hardcover.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But it's only 4 issues. It'd be a little on the small side, but yeah.
Well, I'll collect a small hardcover.
Yeah.
They could add some filler, add some sketches, sketch material or whatever. I don't know.
I actually am a big fan of that. I would love to
love
see...
it. I know. I like seeing the early stuff, the conceptual stuff. And one of the advantages of my job is that I get to see all this original art and things on one of the pages of my website, which I will get back up shortly, is I have a page where I show a bunch of before and after images of coloring. Like here's the original art, the black and white art, and then here it is colored. And I do a fade. And so it fades from black and white art into the colored art. That's my little service to colorists everywhere, if I can say that, just to kind of show people what a difference colorists make.
It really is, like I said, and I'm really genuinely not just saying this. One of the joys of this show has been you guys and the time that you've taken, you coming onto our show, like David Barron you mentioned coming onto our show, Alan. You guys have increased my appreciation for comics because I don't have an art background at all. Other than the fact that I've been reading these comics my whole life and I've been enjoying the artwork. I love going to art museums and things like that, but I don't have formal training. So to be able to sit there and talk with you guys about the layers and the depth that you bring to the pencil and the inking work that's there and what you're doing with that, it actually makes me, I am now doing something through the show because I've been doing this and I'm encouraging other people to do it. That's why I said, and I'll say it one last time as we go through this, please reread your comics and go through and read the dialogue, but then go through and just the art. Set the dialogue aside because you got that the first time through with the story, and you might want to go and revisit it again maybe a third time through because I do that a lot of times. But take one time where you just go through and scan the art and take your time and enjoy that. I know you guys put a lot of work to get a book out every month, and it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy doing this show is because I want to honor that because it's so great to be able to read these books every month.
Well, you guys do in more ways than one, you guys do a great service to all kinds of things. I mean, I listen to the show. It occupies my time. It helps to fill the hours, and you talk about stuff that I don't always have a chance to read, and you do these sort of in-depth looks at all kinds of things and interviews, and you are a part of that. I mean, you like literally, in a way, are helping pencilers and inkers and colorists do their work by entertaining. You have to fill those hours.
You said that we do something in depth. What are you talking about? We do short little interviews.
Yeah,
that are, 10-minute segments.
This is the longest podcast I listen to, and I listen.
As we say,
I love it.
We're almost pushing 4 hours here having a conversation with you on the show.
But I love it because, again, I work for usually, like most days when I have a work day, I'm working for 5 or 6 hours at a stretch. So a 3-hour podcast is just about right.
Well, we appreciate it, and we appreciate the friendship that you've given us since we've been doing this. Because, and again, I want to say this has been way too long. It's really great to talk with you again and to have you on. And I want to remind everyone, besides picking up Brave and the Bold, you're going to be on Wolverine Origins coming up. Definitely issue 34.
Yeah, 34, 35, and 36, and then a little bit of a gap, and then we're doing issue number 41, and after that I'm not real sure. In terms of Wolverine Origins, I'm not sure how many issues, if any, after that we have.
IDW?
I have colored and am coloring. I think it's a series of 4 one-shots, which are prequels to the G.I. Joe movie. There's a Duke one about Destro, one about the Baroness, and one about... I actually don't know yet. I haven't seen the script yet, I don't think.
And are those coming out one a month? Because I pre-ordered the Destro one, which is the second one, so I'm going to get the other one at the store. I'm guessing now then this month we'll be getting the Baroness one as a pre-order item.
You're right, yeah. Yeah, March, what did I say, March 25th, I think, is the first one, Duke. And so April, like the third week in April, will be Destro, May for the Baroness, and I guess June for the fourth one.
So for any of our listeners that are DCB service customers, you're going to want to pre-order the Baroness one this month. So that's going to be coming out, and check out our... And then you've got Terminator Salvation.
Yeah, I colored the first issue of the prequel of that. I worked on that, and then I had to move on to something else, and I honestly don't know if there are any issues after the first one. I simply don't know. I colored one, and it didn't seem like it was done, but I can't remember. It was just long enough. It was long enough ago, and I've been doing so much work lately that I don't know what the status of that is. But the first issue I colored, and it looks like I'll be coloring... this is not written in stone yet, but it's been offered, and I accepted it. I haven't heard anything recently because the artwork hasn't started coming in yet. But there's supposedly a 12-issue a Batman series that I will be coloring, written by Kevin Smith and drawn by Walter Flanagan.
Oh,
nice.
That's the story. But again, I haven't heard anything about it in like 3 weeks. So,
well, I'll keep my fingers crossed for that because I really liked the 3-issue Batman Cacophony. That
was neat.
They did. So I'm if they're gonna follow that up and do a 12-issue series and you doing the colors on that, I'm definitely on board for that. So we'll keep an eye out for announcements of that and make sure to shout it out on the show when it's solicited.
Yeah, and I can come back every month and talk about it.
We could do the, hey, I will always talk Batman. Well, you know what?
Good point.
But here's the advantage of that. If we did do that and that fit into your schedule, we could guarantee that each segment would only be talking about one issue.
Good point. So it would only be about an hour. We've been on about 3 hours here and some...
and then the question would be, do we release them all at once or do we put them all out at the same time and do a 12-hour podcast?
12-hour podcast. Even I can't listen to a 12-hour podcast.
But just to say that we did it.
You could release them individually and then release one like mega extra special 12-hour one with bonus material or something. Outtakes and oh man.
Then you really would be hearing small visions of us in your ear.
I'm going to go to bed tonight like hearing you ringing in my left ear. Why am I only getting sound out of one side? I don't know.
You should have flipped the headphones around partway through.
But then the microphone would be in the back of my head.
Oh yeah, that would make things a little bit confusing.
I mean, it is flexible, but I don't think it's that flexible.
Yeah. Why does Art sound so muffled all of a sudden?
It's like he's talking from the other side of the room.
ArtLionArt.com is where they'll be looking for your work.
Yeah, I have news there. Yeah. And by the time they hear this, hopefully that will be back up. I don't know what's going on there. It's rather bothersome, and I can't worry about it until tomorrow morning.
No, so I mean, but by that time the website will be back up and everything, so people can check out news about you right from your website. So that'll be great. Yay!
Yeah, I've updated it very recently. I'm on Facebook, and I have in my I don't know what it's called, a photo gallery there. I have something called "Buy This, I Colored It."
Always great to talk to you.
Yep, you too. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
It's funny, we actually delayed this episode because of the fact that this book was announced as being collected, so there was actually a rhyme and reason as to why we did this and delayed it a little bit. As you can tell, we recorded this just before Watchmen came out, but then when we saw the solicits and saw that this was going to be collected in a trade, we figured it was a great time to save this and air it around the time that the trade was being solicited so people could make a decision. If they didn't read this, like, hey, maybe this is something I want to pick up, and hopefully those of you that got interested in this discussion do have an opportunity to pick up and enjoy this work.
Holy caffeine!
Hey, Bulleteers. I see that Gail Simone has killed y'all in Secret 6 number 8. Congratulations, and congratulations on 3 years. Keep on raging. Bye.
I love that we're being congratulated on being murdered. Thanks for the well wishes for the 3 years, though. It was funny. The 3-year thing came about so quick for us that we were kind of surprised by it too. We both had so much going on during that time that just kind of swam by us. But this has been 3 absolutely wonderful years, and I do want to take this moment, seeing as you mentioned it, to really just thank all of you for making this such a wonderful 3 years for us. A lot of work with, and this is true of any podcast, no matter their length or whatever, a lot of work goes into podcasting, and this is all for fun and for the joy of interacting with people like you guys, and it really wouldn't, if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be doing this, so thank you so much for sticking with us for 3 years. You are a crazy bunch to keep coming back for more of this, but we really appreciate it, and it is you guys that, like I said, makes this worth it, so thanks a lot.
Hey, it's Ian from Comic Timing. Not sure who's actually going to be, checking this line now that I read the news. Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys had, successors in mind, just in case something like this were to happen, but I'm one of those guys who only gets all of his information from comic books. That is, I don't read CNN, I don't look at the New York Times or anything like that. I just read a comic book, and whatever it tells me verbatim, I fully believe. And I was reading Secret 6 number 8, and I saw those tombstones. I had no idea. My respects to the Seguin and Whalen family. I don't know when it happened, but we're missing 2 legends right now, and I'm really, really sad to know that they're gone. However, if you do need a replacement for Raging Bullets, I am available. So just letting you guys know, all right? Just getting it out there. All right? Bye.
Yeah, and we actually posed for those pictures, and just to tell you how seriously I took it, I checked my pulse afterwards to make sure that I was still alive. But that whole thing was really funny, and we really appreciate Gail Simone and the art team for putting us into Secret 6, because that was a thrill a minute. But thanks for that, Ian, because you cracked me up.
Hello, Sean and Jim. Don Sanderson here. It's April 16th. Michelle and I just went to see The Watchmen, and I had intentionally put off listening to your critiques or synopsises of it after in 154 and 155 until I saw it. Just saw it, and I've just started listening to you guys. One question that I have, I'm not going to take a long time in this voicemail, but I was curious. I've read the books, all 12 issues in the trade paperback. I want to know how Spectre and Night Owl and Rorschach seem to have superhuman power and fighting ability for being regular guys. I mean, Night Owl is just supposed to be a pretty sharp Blue Beetle type character, or Batman to that extent, who has a lot of gadgets, but Spectre just looks like a hot chick who actually could take down 20 guys. And I was just kind of like, how's that happening? And Rorschach, he's just crazy enough that he's not afraid to do anything. But, I mean, is there any kind of secret origins on these guys as to where they were trained or got their abilities? Same with the Adrian guy, or whatever the heck his name is, Osmandia or whatever. I mean, how can he catch a bullet and do all that other stuff? Help! Let me know if you know anything. Thanks. Bye.
I know Night Owl's suit was supposed to enhance him in some way. Like there was, something about his suit that would give him a little bit of an enhancement there. But no, they're mainly supposed to be just characters who train themselves because of the fact that they've been in combat and all that they, typically they would tend to have more physical prowess than, say, you or me, because we don't go out and do the vigilante thing. I know in the film that you're right. They did look like they had superpowers, and I think that was done for visual effect, especially in those slow motion fight sequences and things like that, where you're seeing them do these intense physical moves. And it really is one of those moments where I think, you have to suspend your disbelief at those moments. But no, they're not supposed to have superpowers. Night Owl, though, my understanding was that his suit is supposed to in some way enhance that. Now, Vight's an interesting one, because his powers are typically that, he's been deemed the smartest man in the world. He has, like, these intensely quick physical reaction times. He's able to read people's movements, things like that. That comes from just honing his mental skills. And that was the explanation as to why he could catch the bullet, was the fact that he trained himself to the point where his reaction times were so strong. Again, you're suspending disbelief here at this moment, but if you look back at the original one, he didn't have like superpowers per se, other than that he trained himself. It's I'd consider like take Batman and take it to like an even another extreme, and that would be Vight's training. It would be the way that. At least that's the way I always understood it. And please, anybody else who has commentary on this, feel free to call in or post in the forums or things like that and add some commentary to this one, because my understanding was that none of those characters had superpowers, so to speak. They really were normal humans who, just because of the line of work they were in, they did that. It was when Dr. Manhattan came around, he was the first one that had powers. He was the quote-unquote Superman that we're used to archetype. So he was the only one with actual powers in the film. So, interesting.
What's up, guys? This is Tim. It's not so much a rant and rave about a comic, it's a question. With all the hype behind Dick Grayson going on right now, I'm really into Nightwing. Series ended. I was wondering if you guys could recommend some good trades. I'd love to hear from you guys later.
When it comes to Nightwing, my rule of thumb, if you haven't read any of the Chuck Dixon work, I would start with anything Chuck Dixon related. Some of the trades featuring Chuck Dixon: On Razor's Edge, Love and Bullets, A Darker Shade of Justice. I was just looking at InStockTrades.com. I particularly liked the Nightwing Huntress stuff that was going on. That was written by Devin Grayson, and there's a trade, Nightwing Huntress. It was a kind of a crossover between those two characters, so if you like Huntress, that's an interesting one by Devin Grayson. I'm assuming you've read Peter Tomasi's stuff, the Free Fall trade paperback. That's his initial run in Nightwing. I really enjoyed that. I like what Marv Wolfman was doing when he was over there. I know that that's collected in the Love and War trade paperback, but for me, it's if you want to start somewhere, I would start with first of all the Chuck Dixon stuff and kind of work your way forward from there, because that laid the groundwork for what I think are just fantastic Nightwing stories. So that would be the starting point for me. Just look for the name Chuck Dixon, and that would be actually my recommendation for a lot of people for Robin. If you are a current Robin reader, maybe you've been reading since 1 year later, for example, and you never read anything before, I would go to the Chuck Dixon stuff, and you're going to find some really great Tim Drake stories. So the same thing that I would say about Dick Grayson, I would easily go with Tim Drake and just say Chuck Dixon. That's the way you want to go.
Hey guys, it's Ian. Let me officially put myself into the camp of make your episodes as long as possible. I just got a job for the next 2 months where I'm going to be doing nothing but basically bagging up and packing up books so that they can be sent to another place. I mean, I'm getting good money for it and everything, but I'm sort of stuck down in this, book locker for about 6 or 7 hours a day. And, it's only 3 days a week, not too bad. But the point remains, my one salvation is the fact that I got podcasts to listen to down here. I'm about a half hour to 45 minutes into episode, I don't even know, what is it, 154 or whatever, where you guys do the Watchmen talk and Green Lantern Corps and everything. And I can safely say I'm going to be listening to you guys for the next 3 hours. What better way for me to get through one of your shows than to bring books back and forth? Job well done, folks. Job well done. Keep it up, Sean and Jim. And it's looking more and more like I'm going to be in San Diego, so give me a heads up if you need a on-the-road reporter or something like that to take care of some of the panels while you're there. Anyway, we can be in touch. Talk to you guys later. Bye.
I adore convention reports. So if you happen to hit any DC panels or anything, and you want to call in or Skype in or we'll do a nice little segment on those, I would love to. Certainly, I always love chatting with you anyway, Ian. But and that's really kind of a shout. I'm glad you brought that up because it's kind of a shout out to anybody. If you're going to a convention and there happens to be some DC news or something like that, always shoot me an email at ragingbullets@gmail.com. I'd love to have you on the show. We'll Skype you on. We can chat about it. I always find it interesting to talk with somebody who's been at the panel to get like a gut reaction as far as what are you excited about? What kind of things were interesting to you? I think, it's easy nowadays to find information about the panels on the internet. If you want to know what's going on at the panels, that's the way to do it. The reactions, I think, are more interesting to people, like hearing the news, what excites you about it, what do you think the news means? Because a lot of times they throw out little teasers and tidbits and you're left to speculate. And that's one of the fun things about going to a comic panel at any convention where you're excited about the books is to kind of speculate what's going on. So, Ian, we'd always, God, I'd love to have you on, so that would be wonderful. As far as the show length, it is funny. We don't really have like a set show length. Like we don't sit down and say, "Oh, geez, we got to get in 3 hours" or anything like that. Why our show winds up being the length that it is usually is because we're trying to be as comprehensive as possible, and we like to do like a feature segment at least a couple of times a month where it's something really heavy where we go cover to cover or in depth. Like the Watchmen episodes are a great example of that, where we really kind of sink our teeth into it. Our upcoming long Halloween stuff that we're going to be doing is going to be very comprehensive. But besides that, we like to do the Speeding Bullet stuff and try to keep up with as many books that are going on in the universe, chat about any news or previews or things like that are going on that are interesting. So it's, when you're trying to be as comprehensive as possible, you just tend to run lengthy. I try to segment the shows, though, because for people who need a jumping off point, if it's at least segmented, they can say, okay, I ended about an hour in, that segment was over for me. If I want to come back and finish that episode, I can continue with segment 2 and things like that. I know it's not a perfect solution for everybody, but there is kind of a rhyme or reason. I've got the morning radio mentality for it. I wish I could listen to every hour of the morning radio shows that I enjoy, but it's just not always possible. So because of that, I try to construct the show in a way where people can kind of pick a segment that they want to listen to in the episode. If they're not able to listen to the whole thing, they can listen to and enjoy that segment and hopefully get something of value out of that, and that's their jumping off point. Otherwise, they can listen, beginning to end, whatever works for people. So I'm hoping the show is constructed in such a way that it offers that kind of flexibility for people who need it. So that's kind of my thinking on it. We have, this episode's going to be a little bit shorter than some of our ones lately, just because this week is a crazy week for me. So I'm just trying to scramble to get something out for you guys. But then we'll be back a little bit sooner because this one's a little bit shorter. So it's, it really is, there's not a set, it really is fun. There's a lot of times where Jim and I will say, let's make this one just a 2-hour one, and it quickly turns into a 3.5-hour episode just because we found some interesting things to chat about. And my feeling is if there's something interesting that would be of value, at least I think would be of value to the listeners, we're going to put it out there. And, hopefully you'll get that value from it. It'll be something you enjoy. So thanks for that, pal. If you guys aren't listening to Comic Timing, please be sure to check out Comic Timing. Ian's one of the reasons why I do podcast, and he's always been just such a great friend. When Raging Bullets was getting started, Ian was one of my support pieces. Between him and the guys from CGS, they're the reasons why I stuck with this early on, where this can be a very frustrating process otherwise. And this was just, this show has been nonstop fun to do because of people like that. Being good friends to me. So if you haven't checked out Comic Timing, please do.
Hey guys, Donnie Salvo here. I really enjoyed your last discussion on Battle for the Cowl, and I really like how it's turning into a story of 3 brothers, with Tim and Jason and Dick, and I think that's really cool how they're going about it. But I just want to throw this out. What if the Black Mask isn't really back? And that's also Jason, the way he put those explosive thingies in the people from Arkham. And, maybe it goes along with his line of thinking that, Arkham never worked. They always got out. Arkham never worked. So he's using these villains to start a gang war between the Penguin and Two-Face, therefore eliminating all his enemies while he's working it from the outside. Just a little something to make you go, So what do you think of that? And also, I like your Titans discussion, too, but I think the vigilante is Adrian Chase, because what other vigilante had ties to the Teen Titans or the Titans themselves except for Adrian Chase? And I know Wolfman is not writing this arc, but Marv Wolfman was one of the co-creators of Adrian Chase and the original vigilante. So, maybe we'll get that shock and surprise when this is all over. All right, guys, take it easy. Hope you're doing well. And keep doing what you're doing. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm still not sure on the identity of Vigilante. I'm wondering on that one. I'm with you. I could see the possibility of it being Adrian Chase. I guess, though, that I haven't seen yet that this Vigilante has a prior connection with the Titans. He's after Jericho because of the stuff that was happening in DC Decisions, and he's targeted him because of that. And they just happen to be wrapped up together. It is interesting that this is clearly, he's not the person that he is under the mask. He is adopting identities of people in order to hide his true identity. But I guess I don't know. I guess I'm not 100% sure that I believe that it is Adrian Chase. I wouldn't be upset, and I do see that possibility is on the table. And I think we're left to wonder that. It's interesting that Wolfman is crafting. He crafted that one, and he is crafting this one as well. I don't know. I'm still the jury's still out on that one for me. But I agree with you. It's an intriguing possibility. I'm loving that book a great deal, though, and it is the mystery that is part of the joy of it. So I'm not necessarily needing that to be spelled out for me yet on who he is. That's something that I would like to see kind of developed over time as I'm getting to know this guy. And I'm anxious to see him adopt a new identity, and I'm hoping that happens. I'd like to see that be kind of the interesting twist, and how that new identity might change his status quo and the way he operates and the contacts that he builds. It really could keep the book very fresh for a long time. So that's really interesting. Black Mask, I don't know on Black Mask. Part of me is thinking that it's definitely the real Black Mask, but that's another one where I see the possibility that this could be someone either posing as Black Mask or a brand new Black Mask. I don't know. That's a story that's yet to be told. The way he's operating right now, I'm leaning in the camp that it is, in fact, Black Mask somehow back, and we haven't read that story yet. But I don't know. I'm still. It is. There's these mysteries that are going on right now that I'm really enjoying speculating and having this type of discussion where you've got some of your own ideas, I've got some of my ideas, and I'm open-minded enough because it is a strong mystery and it's a lot of fun to just follow the mystery to see and hear new possibilities and new options on what's going on. So I don't know. This is a fun ride. Battle for the Cowl is really surprising me at just how much I enjoyed it. I'll admit I'm a huge Batman fan, but I walked into this one thinking, okay, I'm going to enjoy this 3-issue mini, but I'm really going to be longing for June when these books launch. And no, I'm enjoying this ride right now. I'm enjoying Battle for a Cowl a great deal. All of these one-shots and the 3-issue minis such as Azrael and Oracle, these things are just adding to the enjoyment. This is really a great event, and it was a good move, I think, to take the regular Bat books and put them on the shelf until June when they relaunch them in this new move, because then it provides us with a budget where we're able to kind of take, for all of us that were buying all the Bat books anyway, we're, spending roughly the same amount of money to get these books and kind of follow this whole journey and this whole ride. I'm curious to see what the Bat universe is going to look like after this. There's some things that I think we're all pretty clear on where this is going, but there's still question marks about certain characters and what role they're going to play post all of this. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out. It's very well written. The art is very well done. Tony Daniels, really shocking me with what he's delivering here. But I'm going to say that the same thing with all of the writers, all of the artists that are involved in all these minis as well. Azrael's been a blast, and I'm really liking that book a great deal. And Oracle, we're going to be doing an upcoming segment with Oracle. We have that planned as well to be talking about that book, because that's another really interesting ride and with a lot of mystery to it. Talk about mystery, what's going to happen to Barbara. I think it's what we're all questioning. What is Barbara's status going to be outside of this? And it's going to be one of those controversial moves, I think, one way or another. Is she going to remain Oracle? Is something else going to happen? I don't know at the moment. They could be dangling this in front of us to tease us and throw us completely off the track, or something, the implications been could really happen. I don't know. I'm enjoying what's being presented right now, though. And again, I was not in the camp of putting Bruce on the shelf. Just because I'm a big Bruce fan, and I was, hoping to see him kind of have a victory out of Final Crisis, and we see him back. But I cannot argue with the fact that I'm really enjoying this ride, and I want to see the new Batman. I want to really see how they handle this and what they do with it, and also I want to see the mystery of what's going on with Bruce, and I want to see what that looks like and what the journey looks like. I don't think any of us are. I think all of us are pretty much assuming that we are going to see Bruce back at some point, but to me, I think the fun ride is going to be seeing what Bruce has gone through during that time, and what does that world look like for him. And those are stories that I want to read as well. So they've really crafted a very cool looking Gotham post all of this. The solicits for June look stellar. And I'm really excited with the creators that are being brought in. I was enjoying it. I was enjoying Gotham a great deal before this, and I'm looking to continue to enjoy Gotham right after this. Big mystery, and I gotta say, I'm looking forward to Battle for the Cowl #3. I want to see what's going to happen with all this. Donnie Salvo is, of course, from the Reality Wasted podcast. So if you haven't been checking them out, just hearing Donnie talk on this show, I think it's real clear that you should be listening if you're not. So check out Reality Wasted. Had the pleasure of meeting Donnie in New York, and definitely consider Donnie a friend, and always good to hear from you, Donnie. I'm going to end this segment with a quick audio comment from Rick Croxton from the Book Cave. We've got a couple of audio comments. We've got a Wonder Woman DVD one, which I'm going to put on the next episode as well, from our good friend Brent Cassina. It's a BK's Bullets. But this one is about the Sun Devils. And Rick, I like when he does this, because he does this kind of quarter bin thing where he talks about books that you can find in your quarter bin, which is always interesting when you go to conventions. It's a lot of times, what can I look for? What can I find that is something maybe I've never read before that I'm going to find in some of those bargain bins where I might stand a shot of getting a full run of a mini-series of some sort that I might have missed. So Rick always does these wonderful things. If you haven't checked out the Book Cave, be sure to check out the Book Cave podcast. But for right now, here's Rick.
Hey, Sean and Jim. This is Rick Croxton of the Book Cave, here with another review of a limited series from the 1980s called The Sun Devils by Jerry Conway and Dan Jurgens. It's 12 issues, and it came out in 1984. And it's very, up to 85, of course. Very nice looking art. It's good science fiction. It's one of those that is self-contained, does not cross over with any other DC books, and usually it's pretty easy to find in most of your cheaper boxes. You could probably find anywhere from $0.25 to $1 a piece. I picked up quite a few myself for $0.25, and so far that I know of, it has never been reprinted. Maybe like the Camelot 3000 I did earlier, they might reprint that in a hardback. But it's got a very good story. Some of the dialogue might be a little dated, but it is very well done. Of course, Jerry Conway is one of my favorite writers. He does very good work on there. The covers, each 3 issues is a 3-part cover. You put the 3 together and you have a cover. 1 through 3 has one cover, 4 through 6 another, 7 through 9, and 10 through 12. And there's only one character through the whole works that has any super powers, and he's kind of the ex machina type character. Then you have another character who's pretty much a giant woman with long white hair, a cigar, and interesting outfits that she wears. You have the main character, Rick. He spells his R-I-K, and he's kind of a diplomat. Sort of think of Luke Skywalker in a way of the fighting. Now, this is a very good read, and I highly recommend it to anybody that is interested in science fiction and DC. Thank you, and goodbye.
And definitely check out the Book Cave. If Rick is always wonderful and does these wonderful segments for us, so please check out the Book Cave podcast and support Rick. You know what? That's one I have not read, and I'm really curious to read it now. It's one of those that I'm always looking for things when I go to conventions to pick up where I can pick up a full storyline. I'm a big fan of picking up arcs of things or mini-series or something that I can read afterwards, rather than a couple issues of this and a couple issues of that. I do like the quest, like everybody else, where, it's trying to fill in a full run of a series or something like that if I don't have all of the issues. That's always fun for me. But even more entertaining for me is when I walk out of there with something that I haven't read that is a chunk of a run or a miniseries like that. So this is something that I'll definitely be seeking out as well. And if any of you want to do these, they're wonderful. I do enter people into our contest for doing audio comments. So this one, for example, and Brent Casina's, because there's something that you kind of produce on your own, that's something that I'm definitely going to do, is start adding audio comments into that as well, because they're something that you take some time to produce and put together and then send in to me. So that's something I will do. And thank you guys for participating on this one. I'm going to cut this one a little bit short just because it's 12:30 a.m. right now. I got to finish editing this one. It's Tuesday. But I wanted to make sure before I finished off, I'm editing the rest of the Art Lion segment right now, and I wanted to make sure to get some of the listener comments on there because I really enjoy that interaction. I do think it's one of the stronger things about the show is when we get your comments on there. We have more voicemails to get to, so don't panic if we didn't get to yours on this one. Jim and I will be recording more of those for our next episode and getting them on. But thanks so much for calling in and your comments and being a part of the show, because that type of interaction I think is always interesting, especially when you follow up over things that we've chatted about, as well as adding some new content for our discussion as well. So, thanks a lot. That voicemail line, if you haven't had a chance to call it before, it's area code 440-388-4434. That's 440-388-4434, or Dr. Norge on Skype. Leave us a message and get your thoughts on the show. I always love hearing listeners and hearing your feedback. Because this episode was a little bit delayed, I want to come back a little bit sooner with the next episode, similar to what we did with the last two offerings. And we have a great conversation that we had with Russell Burlingham from Comic Related. And we talked about some of his columns over there, but we also had a very in-depth discussion on Booster Gold number 19. He writes a column about Booster Gold, so we really wanted to talk about his experiences with the character and also the Comic Related website. We also have an interview with Alan Pasalacqua from Trinity, where we're going to be discussing the two most recent issues of Trinity. It'll be 46 and 47. And we're going to be talking about his experiences working on Trinity, and also some other news that he has to share with us. Alan's always a great guest, and we're going to have a chance to talk about what it was like to work on that wonderful book. So we got a great episode up for you. We're probably going to have some listener voicemails and things like that as well. Then we're jumping right into Long Halloween. So we've got a lot of content coming your way, and I hope you enjoy it. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. I want to remind everyone about Brave and the Bold Without Sin trade paperback featuring the coloring work of Art Lyon, regularly $17.99, 40% off, only $10.79. JSA vs. Cobra, Engines of Faith, 1 of 6, which will feature colors by Art Lyon, written by Eric Trotman, art by Don Kramer and Michael Babinski, cover by Gene Ha. The new Lord of Cobra has shown his true face of evil, and now the JSA stands ready to face Cobra. But the old tactics may not work against this new terrorist network. Conspiracy Mastermind Eric Trotman, Checkmate, Final Crisis Resist, and artist Don Kramer, Detective Comics, and Nightwing. Take you inside the mind of Jason Burr, the diabolically clever Cobra leader, whose goal is nothing less than bringing the world to the age of Kali Yuga. Set throughout the major cities of the DC Universe and wrapped in the gorgeous covers of Gene Ha from Top 10, this 6-issue miniseries sets the stakes higher than ever before for the Justice Society. Regularly $2.99, 50% off, only $1.49. Whatever your shipping preferences, whatever your bag and boarding preferences, DCBService.com accommodates your collecting needs. Don't forget to check out InStockTrades.com for Justice League of America Volume 2, The Lightning Saga, featuring our friend of the show, Art Lyon. Regularly $17.99, 37% off, only $11.33. And that's a wonderful trade if you haven't had a chance to check that one out. Features issues of the current Justice League of America series 0 and 8 through 12, and Justice Society of America 5 and 6. So it's a great chance for you to check out those stories if you haven't had a chance to read them. They're wonderful reads. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
I'm here with Steve Canaris of Free Lunch Comics, and you are the publisher of Free Lunch Comics.
I am.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about Free Lunch Comics? What are some of the comics that you guys are currently publishing and producing?
Sure. We're a independent comic publisher out of Connecticut, Granby, Connecticut, to be exact. It's a company that started about 10 years ago with our flagship product, which is called Bigger, which is a kind of romantic comedy about a kid who's got, I don't know if you've seen, there's a Will Rison's walking around this convention 10 feet tall, but his whole body doubles in size when he gets excited. So that was the flagship product, and that's been, like I said, been around about 10 years. About 2 years ago, we expanded the line of comics to include a whole bunch of stuff by different creator-owned projects. Only in Whispers is our supernatural anthology. Sky Pirates of Valandor is our action-adventure, steampunk sort of thing. I don't know if you've seen that around. We've got some strip stuff. The original Nutty Funsters is a strip work webcomic. And we've got some sci-fi book coming out, and really, in total, we have about 10 different titles in various stages.
So really, Free Lunch has something for everybody, because you're covering a lot of different genres, and like you said, you've got the romantic comedy, but then we've got Sky Pirates. I remember when I was looking at some of the promotional material for the cons, that was one that caught my eye. I have not had the opportunity to check it out yet, but it was one of the ones at the con, Sky Pirates of Valandor. It was one of the ones that I was looking at, I'm like, okay, that's right up my alley.
Yeah. We try to do. I mean, we're under no illusions about the superhero market. Sure, we understand that Marvel and DC have been around since World War II, and I'm not that old, and we're not that old. So we kind of shy away from that, but we do everything else. We do horror, we do humor, we do action adventure, and just try to do the things that I think that independent comics do well.
Well, that to me is part of the joy of independent comics. Is I'm a big believer that this medium can do anything. And I love superhero comics. I grew up with them. But, when I need a breather, I need those comics that are going to give me something more. And comics really is my medium of choice for entertainment. So when I have comics that are going to branch out and going to give me something new, that I go to the independents, because you guys are the ones that are doing innovative things and that are proving time and out that comics can do anything. Just like film. Comics are an art form that can touch on anything.
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of times bigger companies get caught up in bottom line and what is going to sell. Well, we'll take a chance on something that we feel is good. If it sells, that's wonderful. If it doesn't, well, we still tried something. It's experimental, and it's kind of the proving ground. Nobody, there's so many projects that if you would ask, well, is that going to sell? And everybody will turn you down. But then it ends up being a huge hit. Strangers in Paradise for one.
Right.
Nobody would think that relationship comic would sell, but it's fantastic.
Right.
So that's what we try. We try to use our editorial decision making based on what we think is good and which creators we like, and we think the product is good.
Right. And there's a lot of passion in the independents. Where there's, I was just talking to an independent creator just a little while ago, where he was talking about how it took him 10 years to get his project in print, but to me, that drive of sticking with a project and sticking with a concept for 10 years and eventually getting it published shows that there's something behind that project that is special and different and unique. And that's one of the things that I think is, I think it's something that you get out of the independents quite a bit. You get creators that are willing to keep trying to publish a certain piece of material that they have maybe been working on for their entire life.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And when we look for a project, kind of the measuring stick that we use is the clarity of the vision. And when I say that, I mean that we want something that's clearly coming from their heart, not a reworking of something that they might have seen because they think, oh well, if I do this, that's likely to get me work. Well, like Sky Pirates of Valandor, what you brought up, is a fully realized world. And when we sat down with Everett Source, the creator of Sky Pirates, that's what came through. The passion. Like he could speak for hours on the political things that happened 200 years ago in his world. But that this guy loves it and lives this thing. And we just finished the first limited series, and it's been a great success for us and for him. and it's believable, and that just comes out in the reviews, is that it's a believable world.
When you talk about that, creators like Tolkien, for example, authors like Tolkien, had so richly realized his world that even after his death, people were able to take his notes and create books that would, full-blown books that would show this rich world and different stories that he never printed himself. Yeah. I mean, that type of passion and creativity for a universe is something that I really eat up. I actually liked one of the things that you touched upon, too, is the unique nature of a property, not being something that's already been done. Because I think for an independent book to be noticed and to have life and to continue living on, it has to be something that's not a rehash of something that's already being published, either in the mainstream or already... Strangers in Paradise is a great example of something very unique concept, very rich, unique characters that have a life of their own that you get to know throughout there. And it's because of the fact that you can't get that in any other book, you kept coming back to it. And I like the fact that your company focuses on finding properties like that, where they're going to be ones you're going to get hooked on. They're going to be ones that you're going to want to come back to every month because it's something you're only going to get in those titles.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and I think what that speaks to is just the passion of the creator, and not to denigrate anybody's work. No, but when you see something that is so clearly belonging to that person, that there's no way that some other artist could do it justice. There's no, because it's the uniqueness of their vision, and they get the work done. It's not like, oh well, when I get around to it, I'll do it. This is something that's been growing inside them, sometimes since childhood, and needs to come out.
What do you like about working in comics? I mean, working with comics and being able to publish and put out these books?
I would say that the greatest fulfillment for me is when someone bought a book at a previous convention or bought it at a store and comes up to you and starts talking to you about your work. I write Only in Whispers, which is our supernatural anthology. Okay. And people will come up to me and say, I read that and I really connected with this story, and then they talk to you about your work, which is really magnificent. Because it's that kind of thing like, okay, I put myself out there, I'm sharing my stories, and it's getting back. It's getting the feedback back that really makes it. I mean, creating it was enough, but getting feedback is just so much better. It's kind of like the grading.
Well, and knowing that you touched somebody in some way to the point that they felt driven to come back and speak to you about it, that speaks volumes to what they felt about the work.
That's right. Yeah. And I love meeting new people, and we do conventions, we do comic conventions, we also do sci-fi conventions, things like that, where it's a little bit out of my element, but there's a certain creativity in this genre and this market that you don't see in a lot of other industries. Like, I've been to book fairs, and it's normal people dressed up in normal clothes that read books. When you come to a comic show or a sci-fi show or an anime show, you see people dressed up in their own costumes. It's just really creative expression, and I love working with creative people and talking to creative people.
Right. And you're working, and like you said, at Free Lunch Comics, you've got a lot of books that are just oozing with creative expression anyway, so your target audience are the people that you're seeing at the cons anyway. Absolutely. So that's wonderful. Is there a website for Free Lunch Comics?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's www.freelunchcomics.com, and there you can link to all the different projects that we have and the ones we're working on. And most of the creators have their own blogs and things like that, which link to the site.
Very cool.
And come check it out, because it's, like I said, we dabble in so many different things, but we feel that they're all appropriate for the right person.
Is there preview or synopsis material available on the site as far as to get people kind of hooked into like which project's right for me?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's little blurbs on each one, and you can try out. There's some of them have a few pages of material that you can kind of preview and go from there before you buy it.
Okay, so I encourage everyone to please check out, I know I'm going to, check out freelunchcomics.com and check and see which projects are right for you. Like I said, Sky Pirates is one. I remember there was emails that were being sent around to all of us to take a look at some of the projects that were going to be in Artist Alley, and that was one of them that I remembered, I was connected with, because I'm a sci-fi fantasy fan, so that one was one that I connected with. So it's just talking to you, I'm like, now I've got multiple projects from Free Lunch that I'm interested in checking out, and a website where I can check out that preview material is what I'm looking for. So I want to thank you for taking time to sit down and chat with me today.
Oh, thank you, Sean. I really appreciate it.
I know cons are very busy for you guys, trying to circulate and touch as many people as you can, but I appreciate you taking the time to make a personal connection with my audience. So,
all right. Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.